Well, I met Joe about 4 or 5 months ago, and he asked me if I'd come down and speak to you guys about what I do, about the healing, and I said I would. So we're going to break it up into 3 segments. Into healing, I'll explain about healing, how it works, why it works for some people, why it does not work for other people, and then maybe a few questions and answers at the end of it, and then we'll do hands-on healing. So I was born in the north of England in Yorkshire, and I was born into a coal mining family. All the family were miners, and unfortunately my mum died when I was 7 days old, and my father took me to live with my grandma, his mum, and he never remarried, so there was just me, Dad and Grandma. And she were a cross between Sister Teresa of Calcutta and Rocky Marciano. She was the character. And she only asked me to do, if I didn't do it right the first time, watch out for the left hook. But she was a great person. And I left school at 15 years of age, and I went to work down one of the local coal mines. Now, you're not allowed to work down the mine until you're 16, but I worked on the surface, and then at 16 I worked down. And I stayed there for 7 years, and then I wanted to see the world, so I joined the Merchant Marines, travelled the world. I had 9 months in Vietnam, July 69 to... Pardon?
Yeah, we lost you at Vietnam.
You lost me in Vietnam? Okay, so...
the implication's not coming out.
Well, anyway, I spent from July to January 69-70 in Vietnam. Came back home then eventually. I went back into the coal mine for a while. And then I started a construction business with a friend of mine. We did really well, really well. We had a Rolls Royce, everything. I thought my ship had come in. It had come in, but it was a Titanic, unfortunately. It did sink. Somewhere along the ways, I got married. I've been married for 49 years now, and with three children and 3 grown-up grandkids. And what happened to get me into the healing work itself? 38 years ago, that's how long I've been doing the work now. Kathleen, that's my wife, she started to develop major kidney problems, and that was caused by carrying the last of his 3 children. And she was in and out of hospital on a regular basis, very painful. And then just by chance I met an old lady who was a medium, a psychic, and she picked up on Kathleen's condition, and she told me I had the ability to do what I did now. Now, I didn't believe it, because I weren't into this kind of stuff back then, and but I thought I'd try it, and it worked. It worked. So I used to do it on the kids, but I didn't want it to be known in the village. I only live in a very small village. Everybody knows everybody. I didn't want anybody to know what I was doing, because they probably thought I lost it, you know. So we kept it quiet, but I think when God has a job of work for you to do, He's going to move you to that job of work. And how did He move me? He brought a poltergeist into the house. I live in a row house, terraced house. It's about 150 years old, no, 140 years old now. First off, it was very subtle. For example, we go out for the day, we come back, and the faucets would be running, or all the lights would be on. And then it progressed to doors banging open in the middle of the night. And then it progressed to pictures on the wall being thrown, or things disappearing. Now, fair enough, some weeks were very quiet, some weeks were not quiet. But what eventually led me to seek outside help, one particular night we heard, around about 11 o'clock, we heard heavy footsteps going up the stairs. I live in a 2-story apartment. And what made it interesting, The sound of the footsteps seemed to be on wood, but they were very loud and very heavy, but yet the stairs had thick carpeting. And whatever it was tapping on the wall with a cane. So you got and you had to get to the top of the stairs and go. This went on for about 3 or 4 minutes. So the wife says, get out of bed and go see what it is. I said, I tell you what, you closer to the door, you... Well, she was, yeah. And she's bigger than me. I said, just put your head around it. She said, get out and go see what it is. So the first thing I wanted, you ever seen these scary movies and something goes bump in the night and the guy gets out of bed, he doesn't even switch the light on, he's investigating. I wanted the bedroom light on. And we just got one drop light. I threw the switch and it exploded. Nothing. So I waited while these footsteps went back downstairs. And when it did, I dashed out onto the small landing, turned the landing light on, and there's nothing there. Nothing's happening. And I'm standing there and nothing's happening. I stepped forward to turn the light off, and as I did so, there were a blast of cold air just shot up the staircase, passed through me. So I did the alley shuffle and I was back in bed. The wife says, you've left the light on. I said, woman, if you want it off, the switch is round there. So I realised that now it had been doing damage downstairs, now it's coming upstairs, and I needed to do something about it. So I had a friend who went to a spiritualist church. I'd never been to a spiritualist church in my life, but I was desperate. And so she took me, and she introduced me to this lady who she knew, this psychic lady, and I explained what was going off in the house. And the lady said, well, look, just give me 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going into a side room. I'm going to meditate, make contact with my guide. I didn't even know where a guide was. And I'll be back shortly. So she came back. She said, whatever's happened in your house is to get you here in this church. And you're here. She said, but why you should be here, I don't know. But as from tonight, it's done, it's finished. And it was. Well, that very night, they were just starting a healing circle for anybody who were interested in the healing work. So it was far enough from where I lived. It was like 12 miles away. Nobody knew me. So I went and I got involved. And for a while it was okay, but I was getting bored because it were always the 2 same little old ladies who used to come every week. And they never got any better. And all I wanted was tea and biscuits, tea and cookie. And so I decided that this night was going to be my very last night. I wasn't going to go anymore. I'd just walk away from it. And it was summertime, and I'm sat on a seat, and there was a shaft of sunlight coming in. And there was a bookshelf over here. And there were only 2 healers, me and this old guy. And I'm sat watching him, and I was watching this beam of shaft of sunlight moving. And it came to rest on the bookstand, and a book illuminated. It appeared to illuminate, and this is the book. This was the book. It's called Spirit Healing, and it's by Harry Edwards. Anybody ever heard of Harry Edwards? You have? He was probably the greatest hands-on healer ever. In the 40 years of his life, he gave healing to 20 million people. Every single week of his life, he had 10,000 letters from all over the world asking for remote healing. So I read the book, and this book's very, very informative. And it told me a lot more than what I learned at the church. And after I read it, I took it home and buried it. After I read it, that very same week, in our local paper back home, there was a young girl dying of incurable cancer. And I decided to give her the book, and she read it, and she asked me if I could try and help her, and I did. And 38 years later, she's still alive. And if it hadn't been for this book and this guy, I would not be here now. But amazing book. And I'm leaving this for the church, Joe. You can put that in your library, okay? It's very, very informative, okay? So I realised that over the years that some people will be healed, they will get what we call miracles, and some people will get nothing. Now, if some people are being healed and some people aren't, there has to be a reason. And I don't think it's God picking and choosing. There has to be a reason. And there's a number of reasons. One of the reasons is some people don't want to be healed. They really don't. They have some investment in being ill. For example, some years ago I was working in Houston, down in Texas, and this lady came to see me, and she came in, she had an oxygen mask on, and she had a cylinder of oxygen on a cart, and she had, I think it was emphysema. So it takes me 8 weeks to get back, because I'm on a circuit, and 8 weeks later she came back without the mask and without the bottle, and she said, listen, before we start, have you lost me again? I think I'm lost. The voice keeps coming and going, Joe. Can you heal it?
We need to heal. Let me do one thing with this mic. Do you do healing on mics?
Only if it's a gentleman called Mike.
See that?
Okay. So, all right, yeah. And she says, look, she says, I don't want a complete healing. She said, give me about 70%. This is true. So I said, why? She says, well, you know, I get some kind of a pension. She gets help towards the rent, and she gets a sticker for the car. You can back a car anywhere. So I said, well, look, what would you rather have? Complete healing or a sticker for your car? And she thought about it. 70%, that's all I need. And she never came back. So she had some investment in being ill. And I met a lot of people like that. I could relate other stories like that. Some people are still subscribing to the problem that brings you to the healer in the first place. For example, make it easy. If somebody comes with bronchitis or even lung cancer and they're smoking 2 or 3 packets of cigarettes a day, they're throwing gasoline on the fire. Chances are it's not going to remove it because they add into the cause of it. And so that's another reason why sometimes it won't work. Sometimes the person themselves becoming as spiritual teachers, using the problem that they've got to teach something to somebody around them. It might be love, compassion, tolerance, acceptance, whatever. And the spirit within, because the spirit has to open up to receive this, will not open. It stays closed. It's saying, look, thank you very much. I understand what you're trying to do, but I need this because I'm here to teach lessons. And if you take it away, the lessons have gone. I've lost my mission. So some people will not open up to it, to receiving it. And so that's... Oh, and the other thing is, it definitely works, that healing works. There's some kind of a process. To walk in and expect an instant cure from one session, they do happen. I've seen them happen. But it's very rare. It works through a process. It's like trying to grow a flower from a seed. We can't have instant flowers. We have to put the seed in and let the seed become a flower. It's the same. And usually 3 or 4 visits are suggested so that each visit, improvements should be accumulating. Well, for some people, the first visit, it might only be very slight or, you know, not too much going off, because the first visit is trying to open you up to receive. And if a person doesn't get an instant cure, or they don't get healed maybe after 2 visits, they stop coming through. So they're not following through with the program. It is like a course of treatment for sure. So they won't respond. And finally, and there must be other reasons, finally, you can be talked out of your healing. Somebody can talk you out of it. Again, some years ago, I was working in Denver, Colorado, and there were 3 grown-up sisters, ranges, I think, at 35 through to about 47, 48. But there were 3 of them. And they all came together, and they all suffered from asthma, bad. Well, by visit 3, they were great. No asthma attacks, they were amazed. The final fourth visit, I usually ask for 4 visits. 2 of them came, the third one was not with them. And I said, where's, I can't remember her name, Sheila. I said, where's Sheila? They said, well, the asthma's come back. And I said, well, how or why? Apparently she had not told her husband that she was coming to see me. And he realised that her asthma had improved. And when she told him where she'd been, he went ballistic. You know, the guy's just trying to take you for your money or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that argument, that upset brought back the asthma. The emotional upset brought back the asthma. So you can be talked out of your healing. How many have heard of Edgar Casey? Oh, that's good. Because Casey himself would say, tell no one you are being healed. They may try to talk you out of it. And the guy's correct.
One more adjustment.
Okay. Can you
Turn your head to the side of the missus, so we're going to put it in the middle.
Can you make me any taller?
No, I'll make you better looking. All right.
So that is one of the problems. Now, basically, there seems to be 3 types of healing modalities. By the way, how many people here are healers or Reiki practitioners? Okay, quite a few. There seems to be 3 types of healing modalities. There's trance healing, where the healer is in actual trance and the spirit guide is working through him and speaking through him. And in honesty, I've never met a trance healer. They do exist, but I've never met one in 38 years. The other is non-trance. That's like Reiki practitioners, me. And the third one is healing through prayer, or distant healing, or remote healing. It's the same. So basically there's 3 different modalities. And with the remote healing, by the way, there's a lot of people even now think that this healing that healers do is hocus pocus. They think it's some kind of placebo or whatever. They say that, well, the client or the patient thinks you're healing them and they get healed. Well, for some it may be true. But through remote healing, it can't be. Because sometimes with remote or healing through prayer, a third party will be brought in. For example, some years ago, many years ago, back in England, I got a phone call from a lady. She was crying on the phone. It took me 2 or 3 minutes to calm her down. And then she finally told me that her sister, who was 33, I think, 34, she'd only been given 8 weeks to live with incurable cancer of the liver. And the lady on the phone wanted to know if I would send prayers out or do a remote for the sister. And I said I would. And I did the sister with the cancer didn't know this was taking place. This brings us on to another subject, by the way. She didn't know that the healing were going to take place, and I did the healing prayer for her at 10 o'clock that night. She lived about 12 miles away. 1 hour later, the lady with the cancer, she starts throwing up. She was throwing up 24 hours non-stop. She was throwing up the cancer. When it was all over, the jaundice had gone, the swelling had gone, the pain had gone. They took her to the hospital. The cancer had gone. And at that point, she did not know that prayer stepped in to do that. So that was not placebo. That was not psychosomatic. And she lived for another 7 years. The first time she had 2 boys, one was 14, one was almost 16. All she wanted was to see them boys grow into men. And 7 years later, they've grown into young men, another cancer came back. And they never came back to ask me again to try again for her. All she wanted to see her boys grow into men, and that was their wish, and that's what happened, you know. So the fact that people get healed through prayer, and like Harry Edwards, 10,000 letters a week, it proves that it's more than placebo. So now, people often ask me, it took me a while, you know, to believe that I was working with the guides or spirit doctors. In fact, to be honest, it took 2 years for me to believe that what I was doing were actually the real deal. And but I have never seen the guides who work with me. However, over the last 38 years, and I've seen close to 38 million people. Now, it may seem a lot, but if you do the maths, it's only about four a day over 38 years. And out of all those people, this particular guide has only been seen about 12, maybe 13 times over all those years. He's only been seen 2 times in America. But what makes it interesting, the description of him never ever falters, even down to a piece of jewellery. Now, if somebody were coming to me and saying, hey Mark, you've got a North American Indian chief working with you, or a Zulu or an Eskimo, I'd be very sceptical. Because we all have North American Indians working with us. But this guy is different. Even down to that piece of jewellery. And he has been seen, like I say, he's been seen at least 13 times. And he's materialised solid. Now, if he happens to materialise while we're talking, don't panic, and I'm the first through the doors, okay? Sometimes he's scared the daylights. For example, one lady, she asked for a remote healing. She was an older lady, and in the night she woke up and there was this man standing at the side of her bed. And she thought it was some guy who broke in. And she said, who are you? What do you want? She asked him a question. Who are you? What do you want? And he answered her. He says, I am. And he gave his name. And he said, and I never shared a name with anybody. I need to know for sure that if you guys come and say, hey, I've seen this guy. And he, you know. She said, I know his name. And he said, I've come to bring you peace. She said, well, I don't want any, and go away. You're frightening me. You know. And then he just blinked out. But the first person to see him was my eldest daughter, Adele, who was 7 at the time. And this was just prior to the poltergeist coming in. And she'd had asthma, a 7-year-old kid. And then I gave her healing. And then next morning, she said, hey, Dad. She said, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this man standing at the side of my bed. And he had his hands on my chest. And they were really, really burning. And I thought she was dreaming. And if that's God love, tell him I've started. Okay? She said his hands were burning, and the kids always sleep in the dark, they're not frightened of the dark. I said, well, how could you see him in detail? She described a piece of jewellery as well. She said it was shining like a light. So he had his own power system, I guess. And so that was the first time. And then another lady asked who he was and where he was from. So again he gave his name and he said where he was from. But he said where he was from when he lived on planet Earth, when he was on Earth. And so I know what country he came from. So by gleaning information from these different people, I know a little bit about the guy. I've tried to Google his name. I have. But I can't find him. Yeah, but they all cannot be wrong. Them 13 people can't be wrong. When it's down to that piece, it's the piece of jewellery that impresses me. So, but yeah, I truly believe I work with the guides for sure. However, the accent, oh my gosh, has it caused me problems in America? So I'm working in Detroit some years ago, many years ago. So this guy came to see me, and I tried to explain, before we start, I tried to explain, do the healing, and then try to explain after what to expect. So when the session was over, I said to this gentleman, I said, right, so we have to wait now 2 or 3 days for the healing to manifest. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah. He said, well, I see it. I said, well, hopefully, yeah. He said, oh my God. And it looked kind of frightened. Anyway, it went. Now it takes me 8 weeks to get back round. So I'm back in Detroit again. And this guy showed up. I says, how you doing? He says, well, I am feeling better. He says, but thank God that it never showed. I said, what? He said, the alien. I said, what? I said, what alien? He says, you work with aliens. And I felt offended, you know. And I said, who's told you this? I said, I don't work with aliens. It's you. And I'm thinking, I said, no, I don't work with aliens. It's, well, whatever. It took me 6 months to find out what was going wrong. I'm now back in Houston. This guy came for the first time in the morning. In my lunch break, had a phone call. It was this guy who came in the morning. He says, Mark, are you up for a meal tonight? Well, Mark's up for a meal any night. You know. I said, yeah. He said, well, I'll be telling my friend about you, and we'll pick you up, we'll take you out for a meal. So they did. I think it was the Outback Steakhouse, which is a good restaurant. So halfway through the meal, this guy who saw me in the morning said to me, he said, tell Frank about these aliens that you work with. I said, I don't work with aliens. I said, it's who you do. I said, I never tell anybody I work with aliens. He said, you said that in 3 days' time that the alien would manifest. The word healing was coming over as alien. And I've spent years working now trying to, in fact, I've changed my script. And then occasionally, you know, in truth, I believe in God with a passion, and with a passion I believe this energy that passes through me is from God, but I do not subscribe to any particular religion. We all have our own belief system, but I do respect other people's religions, whatever it might be. But because I don't subscribe to the Christian religion, I've had big run-ins with people, especially over here. And in fact, the first time ever I was told I was doing the work of the devil, and I've been told that many times. We're back home in England, and I rented premises. I had a small office about 10 miles from where I live, and this guy phoned me. He sounded very educated, and he wanted to have a discussion about the work I was doing. So I said, well, when I finish work, come over and we'll have a discussion. Well, it turned out he was a born-again Christian, and he was telling me that because I did not subscribe, that the energy was coming from the devil. He said, I said, well, how can I be doing the devil's work? He said, because God is putting illness and disease on these people, and the devil sent you to take it off. I said, why should God want to put... he said, it tells you in the Bible, the sins of the fathers will be visited upon the children. He says, I said, so if my grandfather did something wrong, then me and my grandkids are going to suffer? He said, yeah. I said, I don't think so. Anyway, we got into an argument. He said, well, son, he called me son, because back then I was... He said, son, he said, you're going to dance in hell. And he went. And I'm telling you, I was almost mortally wounded. I just wanted to get back home to get a comforting word from the wife. So I got in. She said, what are you shaking? You're shaking, what's wrong? I said, some guy says that I'm doing the devil's work and I'm going to dance in hell. And the comforting word was, well, let's hope you can dance better there than what you can over here. And in fact, still on the theme of dancing, and I still see it on occasions, not too often. There's a woman also thinks I'm doing the work of the devil, and she wants to tell me that every night she prays, asking God that she can live long enough to dance on my grave for this work that I'm doing. Can you believe that? I like to see it. I'm going to be buried at sea, but if she wants to dance. And then I've got friends who are Catholic priests, and I once had a Catholic priest help me to do a demonstration, and I've had Catholic priests who have told the congregation, when it's found out that I'm in the locality, to keep away from me because I'm not of God, I ask you. So, no, I truly believe it's coming from God. As I say, I don't subscribe to religions, but I have respect for all religions, no matter what they are. So, usually at this point I ask any questions, but Joe says don't ask any questions till the end. So, now somebody once asked me my favourite personal miracle, if that's all right. In truth, you know, there's no miracle. Everything happens within laws. Everything is governed by a law. Even the things we call miracles, they work to some universal law. But we'll call them miracles for easy reckoning, okay? And my favourite was many years ago, again, back in England, I was asked by the parents of a teenage boy, I think he was 19, he'd been in a car wreck. I think he was the only survivor. And he'd been in a 9-month coma, and he'd been paralysed from the neck down. And I wanted to know if they'd pick me up, would I go with them? I said, yeah, of course I would. Well, they took me to a local hospital, and he's in what they call an awakening coma. His eyes are open, but he's in coma. And he's paralysed from the neck down. He got trachea in, and his hands were clawed up. They actually put cotton wool or rubber in to stop his nails digging into his... Okay. So I gave him healing, waited 20 minutes, and then I asked him to move his right leg. And it took about 3 or 4 minutes, but his right leg didn't move. Now his mum says that is a spasm. She said paralysed people get spasms where they can move their limbs. I said, okay. I said, and I call this boy Paul. I said, okay, Paul, can you move your left leg for me? And again, it took another 3 minutes. He moved his left leg. So this time they didn't say anything. Now he's laid on his back. He's just staring at the ceiling. I say, hey, Paul, I said, we've got your mum and dad here. I said, you've been asleep a long time. I said, why? Just turn your head and give him a smile. And he did. So, even now it's emotional. His mum were crying, father were crying, the nurses came to see why they were crying, and they started crying. It had a domino effect. He was no longer paralysed. He was out of the coma. And I got home, and it was about midnight, the phone was ringing. I thought, what on earth is this? And it was Paul's mum. They'd been called back to the hospital. And they were having a major epileptic seizure. They couldn't do anything with it. They wanted to call a priest in to give him the last rites. And something told me they were part of the healing. And I told them that. I said, but look, if you want to get a priest in, bring a priest in. They said, no, if we do that, that's us telling God we're ready to let him go. Next morning, it was perfect. Whatever it was had to be done. That seizure had to take place to help correct things. And so that is my favourite one. But there's been quite a few over the years. So.
Why don't, I didn't want people interrupting you.
Well, listen, I don't mind being interrupted. I've been married for nearly 50 years. I'm used to it, Joe. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, if anybody has any questions, just follow.
Pets?
Yeah, dogs, yeah. In fact, you know what? In England, some healers will only work on animals because they seem to respond better than people. And that brings me to another story where I was working in Chicago, and this federal agent guy brought his dog who got cancer of the liver, and it got healed. And I used that in one of the talks that I used to do. And after the talk, this guy came to see me and was really angry. He said, you're telling me that God's going to heal this dog and heal this dog of cancer, and my wife had to die? What kind of God we're talking about? I didn't know what to say to him. I said, well, you know, we all have a time to go, but I couldn't get through to him. But yeah, pets. Yeah, I worked on pets and horses. I worked on horses. Any more questions at this point? No? But
Can you do it through pictures and things like that?
yeah, it's basically a form of remote healing, yeah. And the first mention of distant healing is mentioned in the Bible. Remember where the centurion went to Jesus and said, my servant is ill? And Jesus said, your faith has already made him better. So even back then we had remote healings going on, you know. So, but not, like I say, not everybody can be healed. It's not meant for everybody to be healed. And regarding the guide, you know the guy with the jewellery? Some years ago, I was asked again by a coal miner friend, his daughter, she got terminal cancer were in the leg. She was 12, 13 years old. In the leg, spread to the chest. And he asked me if I'd go and help her. She was housebound in the house. She had home care coming in. And I said I would. And it was very strange. That first visit was very strange. The mother would not even speak to me. I could tell she was already angry. So I gave her healing, and I managed to take away the pain that she'd had for quite a few weeks. The pain went. So when it's time to go back to the car, the dad and the mother walked me back to the car. She said, "Whoa, before you get in the car," she said, "where's this healing coming from?" I said, "From God." And she lost it. She said, "Don't you try to tell me there's any God." She says, my daughter's in there, riddled with cancer, and you're trying to tell me there's a God. I said, "Well, he's just taken away your daughter's pain." That quiet there. Well, the next visit were okay. The third visit, normal. So the mum actually said to the girl, they called her Jackie, she said, "Hey, Jackie, tell Mark what you see on the night time." She says, "No, he'll not believe me." She says, "Tell him." Now Jackie, she slept in the bed downstairs. That was more convenient. But he had an open staircase that came into that room, okay? Jackie said, "Well, on the night time, on them stairs, I see a man standing, watching me." I said, "What does he look like, Jackie?" And she described this guy with a piece of jewellery. And how do you explain to a 12-year-old kid about guides? I said, "Well, it might be Jesus." She says, "Nah, I've seen pictures of Jesus, it's not Jesus." I said, "Well," I said, "it could be an angel." She said, "But it don't have any wings." I said, "Well, sometimes angels don't have wings." And she was okay with that. And the weeks came and went. She didn't seem to be getting any better, but she did not seem to be getting any worse either. And then one Friday night, about 10 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Jackie's mum. She said, "Mark, I've got some bad news for you. Jackie died at 5 p.m. suddenly." And I tried to apologise. She says, "Listen, do not apologise." She says, what happened is unbelievable. She said that she woke up Friday morning and she's really excited. She said, "Mum," she said, and she named this guide. "We'll call him Michael. He's not named Michael. I know his name. We'll call him Michael." She said, "Mum, Michael is going to come for me at tea time. Tea time in the UK is anywhere between 4 and 6, okay? Michael is going to come for me at tea time and he's going to take me to a really, really, really beautiful place. So can you just put the iron on that favourite dress of mine? And we can go and..." Mum didn't know what to think, so she did, just to keep her daughter calm. At 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, Jackie is sat up in bed. Well, she's sat in bed anyway, and she's whisking some cake mix, making cake or scones or whatever. And Mum is sat on the bottom of the bed reading a woman's magazine. And Jackie said, she stopped. She said, "Mum, he's here." "Who's here?" She said, "Michael. Dad had gone out to the shop or taken the dog for a walk." And she looked round, she couldn't see anybody. She said, "Jackie, there's no one here." She said, "No, he's here, Mum, Michael's here." And he says that, "You've got to kiss me because I've got to go now, I can't stay, you've got to kiss me, I've got to go." Mum said, "Jackie, stop it, you're frightening me, stop it." She said, "Mum, last time, kiss me." She was gone. Kiss, gone. So I guess we all have an exact time to go, all of us, you know. So now, with like I said, I've seen amazing stories. With the remote healing, the Education Foundation called the ARE. It's all over America, but there's a big group of them in Illinois. They've all got prayer groups. Well, one day this lady decided to get in touch with all the prayer groups and said to them, "Look, if anybody wants remote healing, for whoever, you get in touch with them and make sure it's okay for them to receive it, because otherwise you're interfering with free will." And I did. But one day, this lady who said this to the groups, there's a knock on the door, and it's the police. And her teenage daughter, she'd been in a car wreck. She's on life support machine. What did this woman do? She phoned all the prayer groups up and said, will you send prayers out for my daughter? She didn't go to the daughter first and say, is it okay, we can pray for you? The daughter was in coma anyway. And fortunately, the girl made a complete recovery. But I can understand where the lady's coming from. Like I say, some believe that we are destined to have as illnesses and as disease and as injuries. And but it's okay to pray. I mean, if a surgeon pulls a kid out of a car wreck, he doesn't, he's not trying to waken up the child or the person, say, is it okay if I do an operation to save your life? He does what he does. And I truly believe that it's okay to pray for people. Any questions at this point, by the way? No? Yes, sir. Yeah.
I may have not understood what you said earlier, but you referred to this
Mm-hmm.
I think you called him Michael or something.
Well, I call him Michael as a pludin on me. It's not his real name. I don't want to give his name out.
But what's the reason that you're not telling us his name?
Because the girl named him. Apparently she must have been having conversations with him over the period of time when he'd been appearing. I truly believe he's one of the guys, the angels, who bring in energy. And she must have been clairvoyant, because when Mother looked around, when he came to take her to cross over, Jackie could see him, but the mother couldn't. So obviously Jackie must have been clairvoyant and clairaudient to have seen and heard him. Okay? Now, she knew his name, but I don't give names out, because if anybody comes, listen, I'm my own biggest critic, skeptic. If people come to me and say, we've seen this man that you've been talking about with you, I need to know exactly what he looks like. And if it don't look like how I know he looks like, then I'm a bit unsure about it. But I know his name because he has given his name on a number of occasions to the 13 people who have seen him over the 38 years I've been doing the work. So I'm pretty sure he's one of the guides who work with me. There's got to be more than one, but he could be the main guide. And that's another thing. People will say, well, how can you prove that you've got a guide working with you? They might have been dead for 100 years. There's no evidence. There's no modern evidence that you've got a guide. Well, there is, because in England, and he only died a few years ago, there was a trance healer called George Chapman. Now, George used to be a firefighter in Liverpool. And I think he died 3 years back, probably in his 90s. But in 1937, a very eminent eye surgeon in England called William Lang passed over. That was 1937. In 1951, 14 years later, William Lang's spirit came through the trance George Chapman and began his work. Now, it did not, this is for the library also, it did not take too long for information to get back to William Lang's family who lived in London, that this firefighter guy in the north of England was claiming that their father and grandfather was not only speaking through him, but was working through him. Now in England, even now, we have a class distinction, you know. A surgeon were up there, firefighters down here, we have that class. So what they did, they sent one of the grown-up grandchildren with a made-up complaint and a made-up name. She was going to expose George Chapman as a fraud, because she knew that her grandfather was on the other side, not speaking through him. When she entered the room where Chapman was in trance, as she walked in, her grandfather greeted her by a proper name, asked about family members. Over the years, he's been the most investigated healer in the UK, and an amazing guy. And even some of William Lang's patients, who are kind of oldish now, he remembered them. He remembered working on them when he was alive in the hospital where he used to work. And he used to say, "Excuse me, can you remember having an eye operation back in 1932 in this particular hospital?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, I was the surgeon who actually worked on it." The proof is beyond doubt. So that's called healing hands. So, but any question? You go on.
You say you're still a skeptic. You don't know that you have done all these things.
Yeah, I am.
How does that?
Well, I think one of the things wrong with the world today, me included, we want instant results. Don't we? Everything needs to be instant, microwave type speed, and that's another reason why it may not work, because maybe the healer will lose interest or patience if he's been working on the patient a long time, or vice versa. So, but every so often I get slapped in the face with a big miracle. For example, a few years back here in Philadelphia, a lady came to see me, totally blind, with retinitis pigmentosa. With that, it's tunnel vision until there's nothing left. She walked into the room blind. She walked out with 20/20 vision. That gave me a boost. I met a guy who came to Polly's earlier today. His wife came, and he came to see me 4 years ago when I used to work at Waterloo Gardens Centre. Okay, and when he came to see me, he had a few weeks to live with stage 4 cancer, and he came today with his wife, and he's still okay. So when I get stories like that, fine. But then you can have somebody coming with tennis elbow, and it don't work. And I'm thinking, well, if it can work and give somebody the eyesight back instantly, tennis elbow should be no big deal. The person might come 2 or 3 a day at times and nothing.
So not everybody gets healed, so that kind of has you questioning. So you still question.
Yeah, it's good to question. And sometimes I get angry with God and all, Yeah, I'll tell you in a minute. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of things. Are they in print still, those books?
Pardon? Healing hands, you might have to go onto Amazon, and spirit healing, you may get it on Amazon, but you may have to go to this sanctuary but I'm leaving the book anyway, so the information's on the back. Check it out.
A couple years ago, I was in a psychic class at Blackwood, New Jersey. Their education thing, and I came in and I was almost crying. But I got there and my back, I was all hunched over, and a woman was like, "Oh, you got to go see the healer." I said, "Yes, I'll go see any healer. Please tell me." It's in the middle of the Pine Barrens. I went the next day. I could, stand up straight. So I was like, "I'll go back." And I was like, the asthma, because I would wake myself up. My asthma was so loud. I felt like a purring kitten or whatever. And the sweat just poured down me. And it was oh my goodness. It's a minister, Reverend Mandel. I says, it's March. I says, the sweat's just pouring down me. He says, look at me. He says, oh, there it is. The angel just came. And I thought I was going to pass out. I went to the pulmonary doctor. Throw out all your medicine, right? So now it's hilarious when I go to the doctor and, do you have this? Do you have that? And I says, well, I used to have asthma, but an angel cured me.
Yeah.
I love to watch their,
Having said that, some of the doctors, I've worked on doctors, I work on surgeons. Some doctors will send their patients who aren't responding. So again, I think it's down to the individual, like individual doctor or priest. If they're open to it, fine. If they're not, then you're a quack, so to speak. But yeah, amazing things can take place.
What part does belief play?
You don't have to have belief. It does not work on a belief system because it works for babies and animals. But the boy in a coma, it works for atheists and agnostics. I'm not saying that belief is not bad. Belief tells me that you are open. That's good. But it will work whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it. If it's going to work, it's going to work whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it. And sometimes prayers are answered in very, very strange ways. They really are. For example, in 2010, I had to go for a hip replacement, okay, back home in the UK. So I decided, I got in touch with all the ARE prayer groups, plus some of my clients. So I must have had somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people praying that I have a successful operation and a speedy recovery. So I'm thinking that when I have it done, in a week's time, I'm going to be back on the road again. Well, what happened were, while under anaesthetic, I had a major heart attack. I went in intensive care for a week. They sent me home. I'm only home 2 days. Took me back in, pneumonia. Sent me home again, back in again with pleurisy. So in the space of 3 weeks, heart attack, pneumonia, pleurisy. I thought, so much for the prayers. 1,000 people praying, where's God? Well, some weeks later, the hospital decided to send back for me. They said, look, Mark, you should not have had that heart attack. You're not overweight, I never smoked, I used to go jogging, you should not have had it. So we're going to try and find out if there's anything else gone wrong with you. And they did. Apparently I had 3 blocked arteries. And 2 of them were like 75 and 90% blocked, 3 of them were 50% blocked. He said, any more blockage? He says, you'd have been dead. You had no symptoms, you'd have been down and dead. And he said, somebody's been looking after you. This is it. I said, you're joking? He said, I'm not joking. He said, the best place to have a heart attack is in the hospital, and that's where you had it. He said, you could have had it anywhere. He said, but had you not had it, we would not have found out that you had this problem. So I put some stents in. So sometimes prayers are answered in a strange way. You ask for something, and you think this is how it should be, and it's something else. And the other thing is, sometimes I truly believe that sometimes the healing prayers are more powerful if people come together as a group to pray for an individual or whatever. And again, in 2004, it was April 2004, it was exactly 4 weeks before my son's 30th birthday. And I was down in California, and my wife phoned me, said, you're going to have to come home. We have a problem. I said, what? She said, well, my son's called Carl, K-A-R-L, Carl. He came downstairs this morning, and he's crying, he's in pain, his feet, tremendous pain. She said, I took his socks off and his feet were completely black. So we sent for a doctor. Back home, the doctor still come to the house Sunday morning. He said, you need to get him into hospital straight away. So we did. And they turned him, they said he got peripheral arteriosclerosis. Basically, all the arteries were clogging up. Not only were they clogging up, they were moving up the body. So they were going to do amputation of both legs. They were going to do one on Saturday and then the other one the following week. So I went home. But before I went home, and the night before, I have to backtrack, the night before I had this information, I had this really vivid dream. And in the dream, I was asked by this guy I actually used to work with in real life if I'd clean out his son's gutter. His gutter were blocked. So I went up the ladder, looked in, it was just filled with gunge. So I tried to clean some out, and then I dismantled the section, and I brought it down the steps. And then the next thing, in the dream, I'm walking around home base, asking people if they can help me with this gutter. Now at the time it didn't make sense, but when she told me this information, I went back to that dream because it was so real. And I figured, well, it's got to be a father and son type dream, because the father asked me to help his son. Did the gutter represent his blocked arteries? And I couldn't figure out why I was asking people at home base to help me. And then I realized, well, maybe I need some extra help on this one. So again, I phoned around all the ARE people, and asked for prayers. So I got home Friday morning from West Coast, and I phoned up because you have to get permission back home. You can't just show up. You have to phone up to visit. If it's out of visiting hours, and it was. So I thought, well, look, we're just taking him back down to the surgery. We're going to do a small procedure. We're trying to find out if it's come further up during the night, and if it has, we may amputate today. She said, can you give us a call in about 2 hours? 2 hours time? Call back. Okay. An hour and a half later, the phone rang, and I'm thinking it's the hospital. And it was my youngest daughter, Catherine, who lived with a boyfriend at the time. She'd gone to visit. They couldn't find nothing wrong with him. 24 hours earlier, they're going to do amputation. Now, nothing. And they could not explain to me why or how it happened. Well, I truly believe it was the prayers of all the people that kicked in and allowed him to have that miracle. And he did good. He came home, and the only problem were he got involved with the wrong people. And 6 months later, I found him dead. He'd injected with heroin. But he had his miracle, you know. But again, sometimes you need more than one person. And that's why it's good to have a prayer group. If you've got more people praying, then surely the light is stronger.